Okay, let's jump right into today's explainer. We're looking at a massive fundamental shift happening right now in the digital asset space. The hype era, that's over. The wild promises, gone. We are officially stepping into the stress test era. Over the next few minutes, we're going to dig into some really fascinating data that shows how the whole ecosystem is being put through the ringer and how the actual heavy hitters are surviving by embracing radical transparency. Our core thesis today is pretty simple. Digital asset infrastructure is no longer judged just by what it enables during those crazy periods of growth. Instead, it is increasingly judged by how transparently it operates when conditions get, well, difficult. And that makes sense, right? When the charts are green, everybody's a genius. Anybody can survive on a good narrative. But when markets tank, when critical bugs get found, or when regulations stall out, that's when we get to see who actually has solid plumbing. To unpack this, we've got a 5-part agenda today. 1. Exchanges as operating systems. 2. Stablecoins and balance sheets. 3. Treasuries under pressure. 4. Pruning risk and security. And finally, 5. Transparency as an operation. Let's get right into it. Starting with Section 1, Exchanges as operating systems. We're going to see how your basic trading hubs are evolving into massive, comprehensive financial networks. Just think about this number for a second, 88%. Coinbase recently dropped their second quarter numbers, and a staggering 88% of their net revenue came from activities entirely outside of Bitcoin spot trading. Actually, let that sink in. A platform historically known almost exclusively for buying and selling coins is completely pivoting. Subscriptions and services, they're doing the heavy lifting now. The exchange of the future looks way more like an operating system than a trading floor. It's handling stablecoin payments, hosting blockchain apps, and providing serious institutional services. Get this. Coinbase reported that 97% of on-chain AI agent transactions used its X402 payment protocol. That's essentially machines seamlessly paying other machines. Trading is literally just becoming one app on a much, much larger dashboard. And we're seeing this exact same structural evolution on the retail side too. Just look at Robinhood's second quarter. Their revenue from event contracts, prediction markets, actually flipped their traditional crypto and equities trading revenue. When an app's famous for retail stock and crypto trading makes more money from prediction contracts, it tells you everything you need to know. The underlying market infrastructure is completely morphing to meet totally new consumer demands. Moving on to Section 2, Stablecoins face the balance sheet. This is where those old growth at all costs narratives are slamming into a brick wall of cold, hard math and strict demands for operational transparency. The proof here is in the raw numbers. Take Tether's Q2 attestation. You've got over $187 billion in total assets, sitting against roughly $183.6 billion in liabilities. That leaves a massive surplus of over $4 billion. The takeaway? Independent verification and line-by-line public reporting are the absolute new gold standard for stablecoins. It's not enough to just print tokens anymore. You have to prove, without a single shadow of a doubt, that the money is actually there to back them up. And this demand for airtight operational control doesn't just stop at the reserves. It applies to how the money actually moves across networks. We're seeing a big shift toward the burn, attest, and mint model, which protocols like Brawley's new Ion Alpha are using. Instead of trusting vulnerable liquidity pools to bridge assets across chains, this model guarantees par value, meaning $1 on chain A is exactly $1 on chain B. It relies on clear permissions and strict auditability, keeping total operational control as these stablecoins scale. Let's hit Section 3, Treasuries under market pressure, because it's really fascinating to see how massive corporate entities manage their digital wealth when the market turns violently against them. Look at how Strategy handled an absolutely brutal quarter. They posted an $8.22 billion quarterly net loss, driven almost entirely by unrealized drops in their massive stash of over 843,000 Bitcoin. But here's the kicker. They didn't hide. Instead of going quiet, they used that immense pressure to roll out additional public metrics and clarify exactly how their capital management framework operates. It just goes to show that a serious treasury architecture isn't just hoarding assets. Transparency is incredibly valuable when you're down because you have to show your stakeholders exactly how you're managing your liquidity. And it's not just corporate treasuries. The broader institutional landscape is definitely feeling the growing pains. Tokenized real-world assets just hit a record $32.1 billion, and heavyweights like BNY are busy plugging blockchains directly into their record-keeping. But with all that massive adoption comes massive risk. The CME even recently warned about unresolved tax consequences for U.S. perpetual futures. The stakes for legal classification, taxation, and compliance have literally never been higher. All right, Section 4, pruning risk and finding security. Let's talk about how truly mature ecosystems are realizing they can't just expand endlessly. They have to actively manage and prune their risks. Aave's recent governance strategy is a perfect example of this. The old Web3 playbook was always multi-chain expansion at all costs. But an Aave governance proposal actually recommended deprecating low-adoption assets. Why? Because the sheer cost of monitoring bridges, running oracles, and managing liquidations was eating up whatever tiny revenue those assets brought in. It's a huge sign of industry maturity when responsible contraction is valued just as much as blind expansion. But, well, here's what happens when internal governance doesn't grow up alongside the tech. Pump.fun has had wild technological success with token launches lately. However, they've been tangled in controversies over disputed employee dismissals and really cloudy token vesting conditions. It completely highlights a desperate need for basic organizational accountability. You can build a permissionless, wildly popular platform, but if your internal rules are a mess and publicly misunderstood, the friction is going to wreck your community's trust. And speaking of trust, it all comes down to how you handle the worst-case scenarios. The hardware wallet maker CoinKite recently found a seed entropy vulnerability in their cold card firmware, basically a flaw in how random recovery words were generated. But they didn't sweep it under the rug. They executed a flawless security playbook: active monitoring, coordinated disclosure, and rapid remediation, walking users step by step through how to migrate safely. Real security isn't pretending you're bulletproof. It's showing the public exactly how responsible you act when the armor actually cracks. This need for radical transparency applies even to privacy-focused infrastructure. Take Fortitude's plan to buy 9,000 Zcash miners. Sure, it's a massive deployment, but it raises some really critical questions about hardware and power concentration. Think about it. You can't just lean on brilliant cryptographic math if the actual physical mining hardware and power economics are dangerously centralized. Transparency has to cover the physical machines just as much as the code. That brings us to our fifth and final section: transparency as an operation. Let's look at why all this collective evidence forces the industry into a totally new operational posture. The cold hard reality is that tech infrastructure is moving light years ahead of public policy. Look at this legislative timeline. In July, the U.S. Senate postpones the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act. August rolls around, the recess hits, and the legislative window slams shut. That pushes the earliest potential opportunity for any real clarity into September or even later. The digital asset industry absolutely cannot afford to sit around waiting for the government to hand down operational standards. It has to lead, because at the end of the day, that's what keeps your assets safe. So the biggest takeaway from all of this is the leap from mere visibility to actual transparency. Visibility is just showing that something exists, like, hey, here's a token on a blockchain. But transparency is actively helping people understand exactly how that thing works. It's explaining the fine print on wallet security, detailing what exactly is in those reserves, showing how Treasury capital is allocated, and clearly laying out the rules for token distributions. Transparency isn't a marketing buzzword anymore. It is a hardcore operational discipline. As we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative question to chew on. We've seen massive leaps in maturity today, from exchanges acting like operating systems to billion-dollar treasuries weathering storms out in the open. So moving forward, should these transparency standards continue to develop voluntarily from within the industry, or are we just killing time until regulators finally step in and force our hand? Think about what that means for the platforms you trust your assets to every single day. Thanks for hanging out with me for this deep dive, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.